All right, welcome to Frontline, 6 o'clock here on the East Coast, and we are in day 21 of the government shutdown. We'll be hitting that with Senator Rand Paul in just a few minutes. But we begin tonight with some hot news out of our nation's capital, where House Judiciary Committee Chair Jim Jordan has referred former Obama CIA Director John Brennan to the Justice Department for prosecution over lying to Congress in 2017 and 2023. We're going to be following this very closely. Also, a deputy U.S. Marshal was wounded today during an immigration and operation hit in Los Angeles after being struck by a ricocheted bullet fired by an ICE agent, and the shots being fired after the illegal alien began ramming federal agents with his vehicle. Both the marshal and the suspect were shot, suffering non-life-threatening injuries. And House Speaker Mike Johnson says he will not block a vote on releasing the Epstein files once the government shutdown ends. But first, technology always outpaces legislation. But what if there was a president dynamic enough to understand that too? Let's do this. Now, you may have noticed, or maybe not noticed yesterday, a massive tech outage. Apple Music, Delta Airlines had a ground halt at JFK, Lyft, Outlook, Venmo, even Xbox, like 50 other companies, all went down or had serious disruptions in their service, and it cost the U.S. economy an estimated hundreds of billions of dollars. But more importantly, crypto interfaces like Coinbase and a few others had limited access service. Why? Because a service called Amazon Web Services was interrupted. Look, Jeff Bezos is not worth hundreds of billions of dollars because he sells batteries to John Q. Public on the internet. He's loaded because Amazon Web Services hosts as much as 40% of the global internet traffic. 53% of the top 10,000 most visited websites in the world are hosted by Amazon or their affiliates that are owned by it. Now think about this. This suspiciously happened at the Northern Virginia server location, which has significant government traffic, just slightly after Trump announced a 100% tariff on China, and the day after announcing U.S. independence of mining our own rare earth minerals, of which China currently provides almost 80% globally. I mean, what are the odds, right? Now, AWS is not admitting any type of hack that would completely compromise their global reliability on their platform. So they are saying, okay, that one tiny line of code severed internet communication between the customer and the AWS service. That was the cause. Now, think of the internet, your data, money, services, traffic, like a zipper. Yesterday's blackout was caused by one tooth on a zipper of your entire jacket that was just knocked out of place. And it grounded flights, froze people's money, couldn't get into your email, chat programs were down from a single tooth on a zipper.
I think the larger issue is, and this only happened, as you know, for a couple of hours, thank goodness. The larger issue is if this were to take place, for a day or a week, we'd have a much bigger problem. So I think there's a big question about resiliency and just how important these cloud providers have become. They are almost like utilities, and then there's a question of whether they are too big to fail.
This is what I have been warning people about. How technology is so vulnerable. We're all vulnerable. This was one tooth on an entire zipper of your entire jacket. What if it was 5 or 10 teeth? See, here's the issue. Every major company spends huge amounts of money on cybersecurity, antivirus, the latest and greatest software to accomplish whatever they do. But none of that matters if you cut the phone line, which is proverbially, digitally, what happened yesterday. If you can't access your data in the place that it's stored, like if the road to the storage facility is washed out by a river and you can't get to it, it doesn't matter what kind of lock you have on your storage facility, you can't use it. The whole advancement from paper records to the cloud service, or what AWS is and was, if your filing cabinet at your business caught on fire, you lost all your paper records. You were out of luck. But with the cloud, you were supposed to be able to access your stuff from a remote location. Yesterday, connection to your location was compromised. Enter blockchain technology. Stay with me. You probably already use this. You probably don't even know about it. Essentially, blockchain technology is reliability through a plurality and redundancy. Let me explain this to you, okay? So your data in this specific case will use money because, let's be honest, since leaving the gold standard, the money you leave in the bank is just a number on a balance sheet. The bank doesn't even keep your cash in the bank anymore. Let's say you have $100,000 at Bank X, all right? And Bank X loses a tooth on that zipper. But unlike yesterday, what if they never get it back? Your $100,000 is gone forever. There's no record of it. The bank's digital filing cabinet essentially burned down. But blockchain has data everywhere. It exists everywhere. So what is it? Imagine my camera guy, Daryl, over there. Wave. Say hi, Daryl. All right, so he buys me lunch because he's a great guy. And I want to send him $10 for that sandwich, even though he won't take it. In a traditional system, it moves the money from my account to his account. And the bank records the transaction in one place. In a blockchain world, I send the money to Daryl. And a bazillion people or entities or programs or whatever on the internet rush to record that transaction. Think of it as each one as an individual Post-it note right here. And the first one to do it gets a reward. In this case, a very, 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 very slim profit of whatever the transaction was. Now, once it's recorded, it populates the same data on every one of those bazillion Post-it notes, meaning the record of me paying Daryl doesn't only exist at that one bank, it literally exists everywhere. Meaning the $10 that I paid Daryl is still recorded on all the other Post-it notes if that one goes away. All the computers and all that, and your account balance is safe. Sounds great, right? So why is this not universally implemented? Well, because one, most of the experts don't understand it. And two, it costs money to move that service from a traditional cloud base that stores your bank balance in a single location or server form like most do. Blockchain is decentralized, it's transparent, it's accountable, which leads me to why the government hates this. Because blockchain is the bank. In blockchain world, aka all those Post-it notes I just showed you, your money is not held by Bank X that is super regulated and can be reached into by the federal government anymore. And it might not be held in dollars. And because blockchain-based data, in this case, your bank balance, exists anywhere and everywhere, stay with me, because that blockchain data exists in different countries that might operate on different currencies, blockchain requires a universal value for the transaction. Why do it on the US dollar when you can make your own currency that isn't regulated, not actually worth anything, yet simultaneously worth everything because it's backed by the value of your data on that blockchain technology? Enter cryptocurrencies. It's like a stock, but far less regulated, not tied to traditional values, structures, and market caps, more secure, but super volatile. Independent of any government, no physical location, it's used as a reward or a currency that cannot be compromised by any known technology or hackers today. Case in point, people who lost their hard drive or their 16-word passcode to their Bitcoin account, it's lost forever. Almost $500 billion of lost Bitcoin is floating around on the blockchain. It didn't go away. It's still there, just waiting to be claimed. Yet nobody has been able to hack that. $500 billion is a pretty big incentive to hack something, and nobody's been able to do it? Sounds secure to me. Now, sure, like digital banks like Coinbase had a problem yesterday, but your crypto was still safe. It was always there. Coinbase, or their counterparts, actually hold your assets in cold storage offline hard drives as well as on the blockchain. And it doesn't lend it out like traditional banks, so it's physically there, or as physical as digital assets can be. Here's where it gets interesting, because technology always outpaces legislation because the government is slow, inefficient, and mostly run by morons. Could crypto and a technologically savvy president get ahead of the game for the benefit of the country? Now consider this. If the U.S. Treasury in 2009 had invested $348 into Bitcoin, that today would be $37.8 trillion, our national debt. $348 would have purchased 1.7% of the total supply of Bitcoin at the time, and today would wipe our balance sheet clean. Imagine they'd done that for Social Security too. Because crypto is worth what people think it's worth, simply because people are buying it, and like a Prada bag that costs $50 to make and sells for $5,000, supply and demand. Could the government theoretically, I don't know, take 1/5 of our annual tax revenue, which is about $1 trillion, and put it into an emerging cryptocurrency like, I don't know, XRP, currently trading around $2.50? That would explode the value of that coin. Right now, the total market cap of XRP is $144 billion in total circulation. This would multiply its value by a factor of 8. essentially returning the government $8 trillion overnight. You want to get aggressive, they could dump it, crash the market, buy it right back, do it all over again. Pay off the national debt by Saturday. You see, the government can't control crypto like it controls banks and the bogus Federal Reserve, printing money out of thin air. Ronald Reagan famously said, that the government operates very simply. If it moves, regulate it. If it stops moving, subsidize it. If you can't do either, ban it. He didn't know about blockchain. Reagan didn't know about the fourth option. Become what you seek to control. The government's only option to actually have any seat at the table in any type of control over crypto is to participate in it. If you own it, that's great for you. It's going to be worth a ton. After all, we can just print money, buy crypto with it. That's why crypto's here to stay. It's the answer to make sure that even if we do lose a tooth on the zipper again, it doesn't matter. But more importantly, the value of that seamless zipper could be the trick to wipe out the country's national debt. Print money, devalue the dollar, explode crypto investments, sell it, wipe out the national debt, replenish the national gold reserves, fund Social Security, rapid deflation, and reset the system to before the Federal Reserve ever left the gold standard. James Fishback, the CEO of AWR, and also a potential guy who might sit on the Fed one day. All right, let's talk about this, James. This could be huge.
It could be huge indeed.
So what is your take on crypto, Trump getting into it, blockchain? Is this something that's feasible? Because every other president, I feel, is 10 years behind the investment structure. You're on the front edge of it.
Well, I think President Trump put it best when he said that Bitcoin equals freedom. Bitcoin can't be hacked in the most literal sense, the way the dollar can. I don't mean some Nigerian scammer telling you that he's your long-lost cousin who's found an inheritance,
yeah.
Right? I actually mean hacked by the hacks who work at the Federal Reserve. People like Jerome Powell, who all they do is complain, print money when Joe Biden is in there, and then refuse to lower rates the second a man named Donald J. Trump wins the election by a landslide. The dollar can be hacked by hacks in Washington, D.C., but Bitcoin cannot be hacked. Here's what I mean by that. There are 21 million Bitcoin that can ever exist mathematically. Not a Bitcoin more, not a Bitcoin less.
Digital gold.
Exactly right. But unlike the dollar, where you can print more of it, the Bitcoin supply is set into perpetuity. In fact, Carl, the last Bitcoin will be mined in the year 2140. So think about what happens. Demand keeps going up and up and up because of what President Trump has done to liberalize cryptocurrency, to get the boot from the SEC of Joe Biden off of the backs of every single person who is investing in this revolution for the past 5-6 years. And actually create something of value, because the dollar has no real value.
Right.
Bitcoin, by virtue of it having a fixed amount, by virtue of it not being able to be hacked in the traditional computer technological sense, but not to be able to be hacked by the policymakers who will find an excuse to print $5 trillion, send half of it to Ukraine. He does a little dance over there with Zelensky.
Yeah.
That is not how we do this anymore. And so I think you summed it up well. The blockchain is transparent and accountable. The exact opposite of the government. And so if you could impose that regime on the regime, you could bring real freedom to the American people once and for all.
But the risk here is, like I just said in the end, the fourth option under Reagan, participate in it.
Right.
Could the government throw so much money at this? I mean, look, I'm a crypto bro. I'm big into crypto. I think if the government wanted to go in on it, I would be a multimillionaire overnight. However, does that risk the entire integrity of the system if the government throws so much money at it that it inflates it artificially?
I think so. And, you know, all of these cryptocurrencies are not created the same. So you've got things like XRP, which don't have the same exact fixed supply paradigm as Bitcoin. The reality is, having Scott Bessent day trade cryptocurrencies and pump and dump them is not a long-term viable option.
Right.
What is a long-term viable option is exactly what President Trump has done. Create a strategic Bitcoin reserve that with time will increase in value and allow us to actually make good on the promises of Social Security. People call Social Security an entitlement.
Yeah.
It's not an entitlement. You paid into it. Hardworking people at home right now, for the last 20, 30, 40 years, the government took money from you every single month. Don't ever let a Republican or a Democrat call it an entitlement. You paid into the system, you deserve to get your money back with a return. That is the contract that was set up. And so if Bitcoin can be a part of making good on that contract that the government needs to make good on, so be it.
And in 2009, if they invested what I pay into Social Security, I'd be a billionaire by that. And they didn't do that. They wasted it on stupid stuff. I want to bring in founder and CEO of Custodia Bank, Caitlin Long, who also actually started the world's first crypto-backed bank in the conversation. All right, this is so fascinating to me. You and I had this conversation years ago, and I was like, what the hell is crypto? And here we are talking potentially with the next Federal Reserve governor, yourself. Is this something that could be massively huge in the coming years?
Oh, of course. And it already is. And as you know full well, James, it's nice to meet you. Custodia is the one that sued the Federal Reserve because they blocked us from getting in. So, yeah, here we go. And that lawsuit is ongoing.
Yeah. Caitlin, you had to fight with them because you were threatening their monopoly. They want a monopoly on the dollar. They want to be able to inflate it anytime they want. When a Democrat is in there, they'll print, cut rates. The second a conservative like Donald J. Trump goes in there, they want to sabotage the entire system because they want to hurt him. And so what you did, you should be commended for. It is courageous. It is patriotic. You are threatening the monopoly of the Federal Reserve, the stranglehold they've had on working people across this country.
So, Caitlin, but in this whole thing, you know, the idea of everybody in every part of the world being able to trade on a universal currency like crypto, you know, your bank would facilitate something like that. How is it not caught on to do this in larger scale, especially between nations? Like, let's say we give foreign aid to someone. We want to pay Germany $50 billion. Why not do it in crypto?
Well, remember that President Trump is a big supporter of the U.S. dollar, and so is Scott Bessent, right? So they're not trying to tear down the U.S. dollar system and replace it with a Bitcoin-based system. I know some of the hardcore Bitcoin friends of ours would like to do that. I don't want to live in that world because I think the transition would be unstable. So what they're trying to do is to extend the dollar's run as world reserve currency using blockchain technology in things like stablecoins, not central bank digital currencies, but private versions. Exactly. But
well, explain the difference between those, because that's very important.
Yes, a dollar that's issued on a blockchain where you don't have to keep it at your bank and you can take it into self-custody. That's the digital equivalent of stashing cash in your mattress. We have the ability to do that now. Yeah. And that's a dollar-based cryptocurrency. And it's I think, an intermediate step. I think that stable coins are an intermediate step that get folks comfortable with the infrastructure, wallet, having to self-custody your assets. You were absolutely right, Carl. These assets are money just like gold coins that we can have. Yeah. And we don't have to keep them in a bank. And we have actual property rights in our money for the first time since Nixon took us off the gold standard in 1971.
But James, in this whole world, I mean, presumably one day, if you do sit on the Fed, is it just antiquated old people that don't know things that are so resistant to this, or is it because of the power structure, or is it both?
It's not antiquated old things at all, old people. I think if we had the average retiree in America, in my home state of Florida, running monetary policy, we would not have gotten into the mess that we've gotten into. Sound money does not have a specific focus. What we need to do is actually be honest about where we are. $37 trillion in debt, $110,000 of debt per taxpayer. We have to, one, bring down the debt, but we also have to bring up growth as well. The debt to GDP ratio can be brought down not just by bringing down the national debt, but by actually growing ourselves out of this mess. Right. And a big part of that is going to be the cryptocurrency revolution.
It's crazy. Well, look, folks, go back and watch this again, because there's a lot of information here. James Fishback, Caitlin Long, pleasure to be with both of you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Carl.
All right, coming up, the Supreme Court agreeing to review a law that bars drug users from having firearms. Could one man's fight shift Second Amendment rights? Get that in our 2A Tuesday. But first, the government remains closed with pretty much no end in sight. Those details with Senator Rand Paul next.
From the moment Israel launched Operation Rising Lion, Newsmax was there. We have some major breaking news. Israel launches strikes, preemptive strikes, almost 4 in the morning.
Israel has decided enough's enough.
What happened tonight was inevitable.
Something just caught my attention it sounds like afterburners overhead.
Multiple explosions across the capital, Tehran.
I'm in a shelter now. There's 6 of us.
Benjamin Netanyahu has come out to make a statement.
Our fight is not with you. Our fight is with the brutal dictatorship. We have risen like lions to defend ourselves.
Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon.
Whenever the biggest news breaks, Newsmax is there for you because we're real news for real people.
Hello, everyone. It's President Donald J. Trump, and it's Trump time. Check out this red beauty. It's one of my new watches. Wear it proudly on your wrist, and everyone will know exactly what it's for, who it represents. It's really going to be something special. It's for your favorite president. Get your watch today at GetTrumpWatches.com. These make a great gift. It's Trump time.
There's nothing worse than losing your dog before their time.
That's why I created Dr. Marty Nature's Blend, designed to help dogs with everything from digestive issues to itching, even moving better.
Nature's Blend works because it's freeze-dried. So instead of destroying the nutrients with high heat, they all get right into your dog's body.
Take it from a veterinarian with over 50 years of experience saving dogs' lives. I have never seen a food make this much impact on a dog's health.
For a limited time, get up to 54% off Dr. Marty Nature's Blend, plus a free gift with our special TV offer. Call or go to drmartypets.com/TV.
Make this Christmas the year you go all in on joy. At Balsam Hill, celebrate with one of our beautifully crafted lifelike trees. For a limited time during our anniversary sale, save up to 50% off and start making memories at balsamhill.com.
This government has been closed now for 21 days, and the Democrats have had a chance to reopen it 11 times, and each time they voted no because they're afraid, as what one Democrat Senate staffer said, they're afraid of facing the guillotine of the radical left. And who are the radical left? They are the people who would prefer to use taxpayer dollars to pay for health care for illegal immigrants than to pay for the men and women who keep us safe.
It's day 21 of the Schumer-Jeffries shutdown, and neither side of the aisle seems to be bending or budging. This as President Trump hosted some Senate Republicans for a lunch in the Rose Garden earlier today. Which side's going to cave first, though? Kentucky Senator Rand Paul. Senator, you are not invited to today's lunch. You posted on X. I was actually invited to the White House. I was not invited to the White House lunch today, but that's okay. I had a previously scheduled Liberty Caucus lunch with Rep. Thomas Massie. Sir, you're a massive fiscal hawk, which I love, but was that why you weren't invited to sit next to Lindsey Graham?
You know, I don't know why I wasn't invited, but it's good to know that I was still on the mind of the president. And even though I wasn't there, he was still thinking about me because I am maybe, you know, a persistent critic of overspending. You know, right now the government shut down, but there are 2 spending alternatives. The Republican spending alternative, which would add about $2 trillion in debt next year, and the Democrat perspective, which would add $3 trillion. So it isn't that I'm for one or the other, I'm for neither. I think both of them add too much debt. So what I have proposed is something called the penny plan budget that would balance the budget over about a 5-year period. And I think that is a valid and viable and really should be the third option.
Yeah, I mean, if it was me, I would be firm on the don't spend more money than you take in ever, but you're very reasonable at 5 years. So how long do you think this thing's going to be closed, sir?
I think it opens up pretty soon, and the reason is this. The Republican proposal, the continuing resolution, is the Biden spending levels from December of 2024. So as Biden was leaving office, all of the Democrats voted for the Biden spending levels. They were renewed in March of this year, and now they're identical. So this is an identical bill to something all of the Democrats voted for in December of 2024. So it's hard really to understand any logic why the Democrats wouldn't ultimately vote for this. So typically the way these things end is the big government Republicans vote for the spending with most of the Democrats. And so right now they're resisting, but I think their resolve will weaken over time, particularly as it's pointed out that they've all voted for this spending level in December of last year.
Well, the other thing, too, is we're still more than double the spending levels of Barack Obama's time. So, you know, take that as it will. All right. Remember, I got to get your take on this, sir. You know, speaking of the spending and the budget and all these things, we were promised an audit of the Federal Reserve and the gold in Fort Knox. What the heck ever happened to that?
I'm still fighting for that. It's hard enough just to get a vote. We have had a vote in the last couple of years on auditing the Fed, and we've lost that vote. We get most of the Republicans. I think I got a little over 40 Republicans, and I lost 5 or 10 Republicans. I got 1 or 2 Democrats. So we don't have the votes to pass the legislation to audit the Fed, but it's something I continue to fight for. President Trump did support the issue as a candidate, and I think would still sign the legislation if we were able to get it to his desk. But the problem is we need a little more Democrat support, and we need more unity on the Republican side for it. On the Fort Knox, I've been trying to go down there and see the gold for 14 years. I got permission a few years ago. You have to get the Secretary of the Treasury to approve it, and he or she has to attend. So I had it all set up. They were going to fly down to Kentucky, and lo and behold, they called a week before and they said, oh, we want to come the following week because we want to see the eclipse. The eclipse is coming through there at the same time. And we thought it'd be great to see the gold and the eclipse at the same time. And I said, I'm going to be out of the country next week. I can't do it. So I didn't get to go down. You may be right. You may be right. But I want an assay test and a quantity count to all of it, and I want to see it. And so we're still working on it, and I've asked the Trump administration to coordinate this. I haven't gotten a response. So we've sent them another letter, and maybe they were discussing this when I wasn't invited today. Yeah. Maybe they'll invite me to Fort Knox since I'm not invited to the White House anymore. Maybe they'll invite me to Fort Knox to make up for it. I don't know, but I am still fighting to get it done.
Sir, despite your disagreements with Trump on certain things, I hold you in high regards for your commitment to fiscal sanity, at least. Senator Rand Paul, we appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, coming up, are illegals making your life significantly more expensive? Yep, sure are. All that and more in our Culture Clash next.
Drop is finally here. Drop delivers the weight loss benefits of GLP-1 injections in easy-to-use oral drops, no needles.
That's right. The two big drawbacks with weight loss injections are high costs in weekly injections. Drop is flavorless and odorless, so you can just add it to water or your favorite beverage. Drop offers other advantages over injections too. With Drop, you can personalize your dosage based on your weight loss goals.
And because you add Drop to any liquid, there's no concern about injection site infections, bruising, or dosage confusion.
Drop is the easier, safer, cost-effective alternative to help you achieve your weight loss goals without the needles.
Can't find it anywhere? The Wellness Company has it. No consultation needed. Simply order online and use promo code SLIM to save $100. Visit dropthepounds.com/slim. That's promo code SLIM at dropthepounds.com/slim.
Are you or a loved one a military veteran that has been diagnosed with mesothelioma? Do you have questions about getting the best treatment or paying medical bills? Have you received the proper care and compensation you deserve? Let our firm serve you with the same dedication you served your country. We are exclusively devoted to helping those with mesothelioma. Call now to get this free book, and we'll answer any question you have. We'll even visit you.
Call 800-555-8958 or go to mesobook.com.
With today's NBA stars, no lead is safe.
Bet on it. Up 20 used to be a lock.
To Steph, Booker, and Brunson, that's fool's gold.
Got a lead against the Joker? Joke's on you.
Hoopers get hot like pot, pot, pot. And your bet just cashed.
That's money.
New customers bet $5 and get $300 if your bet wins. Paid in bonus bets. Plus, get 3 months of NBA League Pass on us. The crown is yours.
It's everything. Feeling good? Feeling good is everything. I take Balance of Nature. I have been for a couple of years. I love it. I'm so happy with it. It is that good.
Get 35% off your first set as a preferred customer with free shipping and our money-back guarantee. Claim this offer by using discount code Newsmax.
Derriere, Caboose, Booty,
Badunkadunk. No matter what you call it, if you have hemorrhoids, your tushy is no laughing matter. So don't use a cream that treats your rear end like a joke. Get serious relief with Recticare Advanced Hemorrhoidal Cream. Recticare Advanced is seriously effective with 2 powerful medicines for rapid dual-action relief, soothing the uncomfortable swelling, itching, and pain of your hemorrhoids. For serious hemorrhoid relief for your buns, get Recticare Advanced.
At Ancestry, we believe every question about the past is a spark. And when curiosity strikes about your family's story, we're here with answers only your ancestors can provide. The past is priceless. And right now, your whole story is on sale.
What is the actual cost of illegal immigration? Well, not only are illegal aliens committing crimes and making the United States more dangerous, they are also making it more costly for you just to live your life. Forget what they did with the housing market with the massive government subsidies from Democrats and stuff like that, pricing people out of their own homes. But the study from the Netherlands finds this is how much illegal immigrants are actually costing them. Migrants from the blue areas are the most economically beneficial from places like Japan and, America, generally contributing about $500,000 to the economies where they immigrate to. Yellow, orange, and even worse, the red areas are the locations with the costliest migrants in this area. Okay, places like Somalia, check this out. Syria also, for example. Somali immigrants are shown to cost the most for the host nation. On average, $1.2 million per migrant over their lifetime from the aid and all this other stuff. But also, some of these people are getting on the voter rolls. I know they say that never happens, but Texas just found about 2,700 individuals who may, at this point allegedly, not be a U.S. citizen on the voter rolls. Our election should be 100% accurate. The Democrats talking about, well, it's only a few. 2,700 is not a few. But the problem is, do these counter my vote or yours? Everyone has a vote, and it should count. If one illegal votes, mine might not count. That's not what I went to war for. Alexandra Bougher, a Moms for Liberty leader and Benj Irby political commentator. Okay, so Benj, they say it doesn't happen, but then it always happens. And it's just a few. And it's starting to add up to millions.
Of course it happens. I mean, look, it's like, look at the news. Is water wet? Is the Pope Catholic? We know they're doing this. They've been doing this forever. So, I mean, they're doing this. They're replacing people's votes. They're replacing Americans' votes. They're replacing black people's votes. And if you're one of those progressives who's looking for, reparations or single-payer health care, none of that can happen with an open border. So, I mean, Bernie knew that. Obama knew that. They always advocate for a closed border. And now they're saying, we'll give you all this stuff, but then the border is open. And they say, oh, they're not voting, but they are voting. And they're taking your American vote and they're diluting it. And let's even look at, the Rio Grande Valley area. Those counties were for Democrats for the last 100 years, and they all went for Trump. The country is moving toward Trump, so of course they have to go out here and get replacements. That's what the Democrats are doing. This is not a surprise to anyone.
Big deal, though, for basically every neighborhood. Every neighborhood's a border town.
Yes, I totally agree. Well, the thing is, there used to be this way of thinking that if you were an immigrant, you would contribute to society. I mean, you want, kind of weird, isn't it? You wanted to help out. You had this amazing opportunity to come here and you wanted to have a better life. And unfortunately, just in the Netherlands, 70% of Somalians aren't even working. 84% females aren't working, and over the age of 25 don't even have a high school diploma. So what are they doing to make it a better place?
Net loss.
Somalia gave us Ilhan Omar, return to sender, send her back. We don't want it.
Benj, I want to get your take on this. Can we get a postage stamp for that? All right, so remember when in Cincinnati, when some white tourists were attacked in the streets this summer, and the police chief, Teresa Thedage, or whatever the heck her name is, she said this.
At times, social media and mainstream media and their commentaries are a misrepresentation of the circumstances surrounding any given event. What that does, that causes us some difficulties in thoroughly investigating the activity.
Just makes you look bad. Well, she was just placed on leave, Benj, for being accused of anti-white bias and reportedly, according to a new lawsuit, used race-based quota systems for hiring. These DEI police chiefs, they gotta go, dude.
I mean, she's trying to be the cool white girl while, trying to get points on social media. At the end of the day, if you are a police commissioner, you are to police. You are to actually, follow the law and make sure people are enforcing the law. That should be colorblind. So, I mean, this lady obviously looking for a bigger position. She's looking for Twitter followers. She's looking at, I'm the cool white lady. Look at me, look at me, look at me. Just like we have all the trans moms and all these kids. The liberal white woman, unfortunately, is the undoing of our nation. I hate to say it, but it's the truth.
It is. But one of the things that Trump has done, which is awesome, the UN was set to vote on the stupid carbon tax. I didn't even know what that was before all this stuff. It's basically feel-good taxes for international shipping. So the UN was going to charge us more for our goods coming in because they felt under what authority? Well, Trump basically said, nah, we're not doing that, and held the vote back.
Well, I mean, listen, I love our president, and he is a chess player. He knows exactly what he's doing. And the fact that, the U.S. and Saudi Arabia both agreed on that, and I believe it was a, 57-49 vote. So I think it's pretty strong. Yeah, it's pretty close. But let's take the time. Let's really look at this because President Trump feels it's a scam. And if that's what he says it is, it must be.
Well, exactly. Also, I challenge the UN. You want to come here to come to Appalachia and try to enforce that carbon tax. And when the hills start singing Country Road, you can head right back to whatever Ugandan nation you're from. Benj, Alexandra, we appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, coming up, leave it to the left to find a problem with Trump's privately funded ballroom project. They only like fancy things when it's at the expense of the taxpayer, I guess. Next. Sweet.
Hey, it's Mark Lauder. My career's taken me from the State House to the White House, campaigns for mayor, all the way to President of the United States. I came to Newsmax to help our viewers get more than the headlines, beyond the spin. It's a perspective you'll only see on Newsmax.
People always ask, why Patriot Gold Group? With over 10,000 clients to date and over $1 billion in transactions, not a single complaint on the Better Business Bureau. Consumer Affairs top rated for 9 years in a row. Over 2,000 5-star reviews. The only company nationwide where you, the client, work directly with an owner. Home of the no fee for life IRA. Gold is up 80% in the last 28 months, 275% since Lehman Brothers collapsed. We are patriots protecting patriots. Give Patriot Gold Group a call at 888-528-4290 before it's too late. Patriot Gold Group is Consumer Affairs' top-rated gold and silver dealer 9 years in a row. Call now, 888-528-4290.
Kevin Sorbo here, and I have an important message to share. The government needs more money, your money. If you owe the IRS back taxes, they can garnish your wages and levy your bank accounts. They can even seize your retirement or take your home. Don't let the IRS target you. Call the professionals at Tax Network USA. Their tax lawyers and enrolled agents are experts in powerful programs that may even help you eliminate your tax debt.
Call for a free consultation or visit tnusa.com.
Back in the day, you bet sinners just to get boards.
Word.
Now I take them to make threes.
Today's NBA stars, everybody does everything.
Ant-Man, SGA, Luka, dudes playing 1 through 5.
Bigs dishing out like family dinner.
Woo! Got me smashing triple doubles. Shaq, basketball, not burgers.
New customers bet $5 and get $300 if your bet wins. Paid in bonus bets. Plus, get 3 months of NBA League Pass on us. The crown is yours.
You woke up with a sore throat and a low-grade fever. You know you are getting sick, so here's your choices. You can get sicker and miss work, try to see a doctor this week, or sit hours in a crowded waiting room at urgent care.
I have a smarter option for you. Open your medical emergency kit. Match your symptoms to doctor-recommended prescription in your booklet and take the right meds now and get well faster.
This is not a first aid kit. It's like having an urgent care in your home. It includes doctor-prescribed medications to treat over 39 medical issues like respiratory infections, strep throat, pneumonia, UTIs, and more.
No waiting to see the doctor and no standing in line at the pharmacy. It's right here.
Every home should have at least one medical emergency kit, and here's how to order.
Order online and save $45. Your kit to treat dozens of common and serious illnesses is rushed to your door. Visit urgentcarekit.com/news, promo code NEWS. That's urgentcarekit.com/news, promo code NEWS.
Get unlimited satellite internet when you switch to Viasat. No data caps, no contracts. Just a fast, reliable connection installed by pros. Visit getviasat.com or call 877-VIASAT-7 to sign up today. Viasat, internet without limits.
I said, if I do this again, I'm going to get a ballroom built, and we're putting up our own money with the government is paying for nothing. You probably hear the beautiful sound of construction to the back. You hear that sound? Oh, that's music to my ears. I love that sound. Other people don't like it. I love it, Josh. I think when I hear that sound, it reminds me of money. In this case, it reminds me of lack of money because I'm paying for it, so it's the opposite.
President Trump announcing today at the White House that the ballroom is under construction, noting that he's the first president to get this renovation started with zero cost to the American taxpayer. The project is fully funded by privately and by many generous patrons, as he said. Great American companies and yours truly. But of course, the left found some way to freak out about this, saying it's the worst thing to ever happen to America.
People are struggling to eat, and this was like a wealthy ballroom paid for by wealthy people for wealthy people to come and dance in a ballroom.
The White House was not intended to be covered in gold on purpose. It was not intended to be a place where a king sits or a queen sits.
I think it's fairly grotesque to begin construction. The government is shut down. Inflation is still high.
It was supposed to be American, and America isn't gilded.
None of those people were donating some of their multi-million-dollar salary for people in need, but not a word from these people when Jerome Powell and the Fed spent billions of taxpayer dollars to renovate a building that shouldn't even exist in the first place. If you guys wanted more oversight on this, well, you Democrats should not have shut down the government. Trump only needed approval for this project from the NCPC, the National Capital Planning Commission, which, according to their website, is currently closed due to the shutdown. And he only needs permission from them for the actual building phase. He doesn't need the NCPC approval for the demolition and site prep work. 77 million Americans elected a builder. Don't be surprised when he starts building stuff, and especially don't be surprised when he pays for it. Link Lauren, host of Spot On with Link Lauren. Sounds great to me, man. We don't have to pay a dime.
Absolutely. Great to be back with you, Carl. I think what the left is really upset about is that they lost so resoundingly last November, right? Hillary Clinton, Kamala Harris, they're all upset about these renovations at the White House. Maybe you guys should have won your elections, and then you can design the White House you want. You know what I'm saying? And Hillary Clinton, right, when she left the White House in January of 2001 with Bill Clinton, disgraced, she stole tens of thousands of dollars of property. She took rugs and china and all of this government property that she had to give back, and then she bought some of it. So I don't want to hear from these people. They say President Trump is disgracing the White House, defiling the White House. I think having an oral transaction with your intern in the Oval Office, that was disgracing the White House. Building a beautiful ballroom, that is not disgracing the White House. I also want them to host the next season of Dancing with the Stars at the White House. That would make me very happy.
I'm with you up until that last one, Mike, I gotta say. All right, I could give two hoots about that series. My wife loves that show, by the way. She'll be thrilled you said that. All right, so thousands of students also have voted to oust the Oxford Union president-elect in his no confidence vote. He actually submitted his own no confidence vote over his Charlie Kirk comments, where he said, to fellow students on a WhatsApp chart, that, Charlie Kirk got shot, let's effing go, while another on his Instagram account read, Charlie Kirk got shot, LOL. He actually debated Charlie Kirk earlier this year, but this goes to the larger point that we've been saying, and now it's actually been proven. Only 17 out of 100 leaders of top colleges made public statements about Charlie Kirk in a positive light, yet in 2020, 94 of those same colleges issued leadership level flaunting statements about George Floyd posting black squares.
Absolutely. You know what's interesting? The news cycle moves so fast. People forget Charlie Kirk was only assassinated on September 10th. His family is grieving. Erica Kirk is grieving, trying to raise their two kids, take over Turning Point. So when these people make such disgusting comments, I don't know how they look themselves in the mirror. I don't know how they sleep at night, but every single day I wake up and I thank God that I live here in the United States and not in the UK, that I have nothing to do with Oxford Union. These people are embarrassing. In the UK, sort of like the Democratic Party here in the US, they've been co-opted and taken over by this far left progressive majority, and it's why they're going down the tubes with all the mass migration and the censorship. This is pretty gross, Carl.
Real quick, I want to get to AI, okay? There's this new study, and it lays out, look, AI, take it for what it is. It's great for finding sources, but you shouldn't always trust it because The top 5 sources being sourced for it are Reddit, Wikipedia, YouTube, and Google and Yelp, okay? I mean, like, can we get some real news in there?
Absolutely. You know what's interesting? For years, I've been saying we need media literacy courses in school, right? Kids need to be able to learn that when they see something on the internet, it might not be 100% factual. That's why I love what the First Lady is doing with AI, education, Be Best, the Take It Down Act. These are 21st century issues that aren't going anywhere. And there's so many positives we can do with AI in the medical realm and the medical space, but there are negatives with every single evolution. And so I think people need to learn more about how to look at these things and say what's real and what's not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I mean, it all seems crazy, but we'd base anything off Wikipedia because we're not allowed to source that here in mainstream news. Link, Lauren, pleasure, my man.
Thank you so much.
All right, coming up, another Second Amendment case on its way to the Supreme Court, but what does it mean for gun owners? We got that in our 2A Tuesday next.
Hi, folks. I'd like to tell you about YRefi. Did you know that as an accredited investor, when you invest in YRefi, your interest rate is fixed? And did you know that you can invest from 1 to 5 years and you can spread your investment over those terms to best suit your needs? And you have the freedom to take your monthly interest income or reinvest it, whatever you choose. When you invest in YRefi, your interest is calculated daily, you're paid monthly, and should you need your money back early, there is a liquidity feature. Would you like more information? All you have to do is call 877-80-INVEST. That's 877-80-INVEST, or log on to investyrrefi.com. That's investyrrefi.com for complete details. And make sure you review the private placement memorandum and scan this QR code to view the disclosure at your leisure. YRefi, investing in America's future.
With today's NBA stars, no lead is safe.
Bet on it. Up 20 used to be a lock.
To Steph, Booker, and Brunson, that's fool's gold.
Got a lead against the Joker? Joke's on you.
Hoopers get hot like pop, pop, pop. And your bet just cashed.
That's money.
New customers bet $5 and get $300 if your bet wins. Paid in bonus bets. Plus, get 3 months of NBA League Pass on us. The crown is yours.
Hello, everyone. It's President Donald J. Trump, and it's Trump time. Check out this red beauty. It's one of my new watches. Wear it proudly on your wrist, and everyone will know exactly what it's for, who it represents. It's really going to be something special. It's for your favorite president. Get your watch today at gettrumpwatches.com. These make a great gift. It's Trump time.
My employees and I want to thank all of you at Newsmax for your continued support of MyPillow. It's because of you and the grace of God that we're making it through. And to thank you, we're bringing you the best offers ever. Get our MyPillow bed sheets, only $29.88. Any color, any style, any size, even kings, regularly $119.98, now only $29.88. Our My Towels are finally back in stock. Get a 6-piece My Towel set, regular $69.98, now only $39.98. Towels that actually work. What a concept. And for the first time and the only time ever, you're going to get our limited edition premium My Pillows. They're made with Giza cotton and a designer gusset. Queen $17.98, Kings only $19.98. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code when you order today. Inventory for these offers are extremely limited, and once they're gone, they're gone.
Well, it's 2A Tuesday. Let's do some gun stuff. Some major 2A news out of the Supreme Court this week. They have agreed to hear a case on the gun rights of people who smoke the devil's lettuce on illegal drugs and things like that. But will this impact the rights of, veterans on psychedelic-assisted therapy too? This is going to be the Second Amendment case the court will hear this term, the other being where licensed gun owners, where they can carry, like the New York SAFE Act and things like that. 2 hearings on 2A, 1 session, huge deal. Cam Edwards, host of the amazing podcast Bearing Arms, Cam and Company, and AWR Hawkins, Second Amendment columnist at Breitbart News. Well, Cam, 2 cases. We didn't get any last time, but we got 2 this time.
That's right, and I'm still holding out hope for a third. We've got the magazine ban case out of California that the court's going to consider in conference at some point here in a few weeks, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed they grant cert. But yeah, they announced today, on Monday, that they're taking a case called U.S. versus Hamani, which as you say, deals with Section 922G3. This is the same law that Hunter Biden was convicted on of being an unlawful user of drugs in possession of a firearm. And we could probably all agree that, maybe crack smokers shouldn't be out there walking around with guns.
Facts.
But again, you talk about veterans who are using this psychedelic-assisted therapy. You talk about, cancer patients who are living in states where medical marijuana has been legalized. They are prohibited under federal law from possessing firearms. And so, this is a question, I think, where the court may decide that the law is constitutional in some aspects, but not in others.
Yeah. Going to be interesting to see how they come down and if they actually try to write legislation out of it, too, because that's an interesting thing this court generally doesn't do. AWR, Florida, free state of Florida, the GOP rep Tyler Psiriosis, I have no idea. He filed a bill for 2026 legislative session that would lower the state's minimum firearm purchase age from 21 to 18. And this goes back to Clarence Thomas' majority opinion in the Bruin case that says the Second Amendment is not a second-class right and you can vote at 18.
Right, exactly right. Now, that's what I like about this. I look at this as a pro-adult bill. 18 to 20-year-olds, their Second Amendment rights, if this legislation passes, will be recognized, and they'll be able to buy firearms for self-defense as they should. At 18, Carl, I'm preaching to the choir when I talk to you, but when these people go in the military, they're carrying guns that far surpass the little 9mm they might be carrying in Florida for self-defense. Right. It's ridiculous that they're barred from doing it. Ridiculous.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Or you raise the voting age to 21. You can't pick and choose. So Virginia Congressman Cam Ben Cline is leading 29 of his colleagues in a request to the ATF for the NFA, so suppressors and things like that. However, Gun Owners of America sued for this and forced the ATF to process National Firearms Act suppressors, full autos, and things like that during the shutdown. Hey, you want to make the process? You got to do it regardless whether you're getting paid.
Yeah, I'm really glad to see that these examiners are back on the job as of yesterday because, again, for weeks, NFA applications have just been sitting dormant. The Trump administration has said suppressors are protected by the Second Amendment. So in that case, I think that these examiners are essential employees. We've got the NICS check up and running, right? So, if you go and buy a handgun or a rifle from a gun store, you've been able to do that during the shutdown.
Yeah.
Why shouldn't you be able to purchase NFA items as well? So this is a great move by the Trump administration to bring those examiners back to work.
Correction, I just bought 2 this weekend. Let me be clear about that. All right, so AWR, I got about 30 seconds for you here. Glock has announced the discontinuation of more than 30 handgun models. This is great. I think Glocks are trash. I'm a SIG guy to the bone.
Right, I know you are. I love SIG too. But I happen to love Glock. I think we don't want to go too far afield. I think they're just kind of trying to release something that is a little harder to modify with illegal modifications. That's only my opinion, but that's where I think we are on this. I'm like you. I don't know which model you carry. I carry a P365X Macro.
Me too.
But I'll tell you what, I love a 43X. I'll carry a 43X every now and then. I'm pro-gun in general. So, but I hope Glock is simply retooling to fix what has caused them so many suits. I'm not saying they deserve the lawsuits, but I hope that's all that's happening here and that Glock continues to make great handguns.
Yeah, I mean, hey, look, you heard it here. AWR doesn't discriminate. He just wants you to carry. I like that.
That's it.
All right, Cam, AWR, always a pleasure, my guys.
Thanks, Carl. Thank you, buddy.
All right, before we go, Trump dishes on some White House history. What did we learn today? That's next.
The press won't report the real story.
The American people are actually very smart.
Ridiculous statements.
These guys are just plain weird.
Actual scandals.
Even the immunity decision. I mean, that decision was so misreported.
That's my job, and I aim to do it every night.
Back in the day, you bet sinners just to get boards. Word. Now I take them to make threes.
Today's NBA stars, everybody does everything.
Ant-Man, SGA, Luka, dudes playing 1 through 5.
Biggs dishing out like family dinner.
Woo! Got me smashing triple doubles. Shaq, basketball, not burgers.
New customers bet $5 and get $300 if your bet wins. Paid in bonus bets. Plus, get 3 months of NBA League Pass on us. The crown is yours.
Talking to people today about their retirement accounts. Sir, excuse me.
Yeah.
Do you have a retirement account?
Yeah, I've got a TSP for my old government job.
How's that doing?
I'm forgetting about it.
I
can't contribute to it. There are fees to get the funds, and the investment options are limited, so the money's just stuck.
How about a gold IRA?
I can do that.
Absolutely. You can roll it into a gold IRA, and you have all the same tax advantages as a TSP, but with more flexibility. And you can put physical gold and silver in your retirement account.
I'm taking control with Noble Gold Investments.
Your retirement, your rules. Noble Gold.
This smart home is going to the Hoyam family so they can live an independent life with their catastrophic injuries.
The whole house is just set up in a perfect way. All the normal complications of being in a chair. This place is a huge load off for that. The things that Tunnel to Towers Foundation has done is just a lot more than you would ever expect to get in your entire life.
Join us in supporting our nation's heroes and their families. It only takes $11 a month. Go to T2T.org now.
There's nothing worse than losing your dog before their time. So why do so many dog foods contain awful things a human would never eat? To save his pets, world-famous veterinarian Dr. Marty knew he had to change what was in their bowl.
That's why I created Dr. Marty Nature's Blend, my breakthrough formula that's changed everything about dog food.
Nature's Blend contains nothing but all-natural ingredients, designed to help dogs with everything from digestive issues to itching and paw licking, even moving around better. And that's because Nature's Blend is freeze-dried. So instead of destroying the nutrients with high heat, we gently preserve them, and you'll see the difference in your dog.
Take it from a veterinarian with over 50 years of experience saving dogs' lives. I have never seen a food make this much impact on a dog's health.
Such a huge difference in her health. More energy, more playful, no more pooping issues. He's healthier, he looks better.
Dr. Marty has thousands of 5-star reviews. And for a limited time, get up to 54% off Dr. Marty Nature's Blend, plus a free gift with our special TV offer. Call or go to drmartypets.com/TV. That's drmartypets.com/TV.
If a parent or loved one has been diagnosed with mesothelioma, we are here to help. With our MesoCare promise and decades of experience exclusively helping mesothelioma victims and their families, our firm will fight for the care and compensation you and your family deserve. We'll come to you and put a plan in place. Please call now.
Call now and we'll come to you for a free consultation. Call now at 800-664-2000 or go to mesobook.com.
You okay in there? Consumer Cellular knows there are a lot of offers flying around, but they slip away too fast. We don't play games. What you see is what you get. No hot air, just plans starting at $20. Bet you're glad you wore cargo pants. Because cargo pants have all those pockets. You can see how we can cut your bill. Plans start at just $20. Call Consumer Cellular.
All right. President Trump is renovating the White House, as we told you earlier, with his own money. And at today's Rose Garden lunch, the president also pointed out the Wall of Fame that he's added to the West Wing, the colonnade area there, even dishing out some White House history. Watch this.
This is, as you see over here, the Presidential Walk of Fame. And we had this long wall with half windows because that used to be a swimming pool on the other side of the wall. That was the swimming pool where Jackie would say, "I hear women inside." Are women inside? Quite a famous, I'm not saying anything, this was a part of a movie. And the Secret Service said, "No, ma'am." So that was the famous swimming pool. Now it's even worse. It's for the media. They covered the pool up. They covered the pool up, and now it's for the media.
Yes. Rob, he'll go for like 2 hours on the funniest stuff. And where does he come up with this stuff?
I don't know how he does it every day, too. I mean, the stories, I looked into some of the stuff that happened in that swimming pool. Yeah. And, man, there are some stories from the Kennedy years.
And that Wall of Fame right there, they got the portraits, and instead of Biden, they just put the auto pen.
It's something. It's a spectacle to behold. It certainly is. Carl, good to see you.